We are back with another episode of the RepVue podcast. We've got Garris Yeung from UpKeep. He's head of sales, and excited to have you on, Garris. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Tell us, let's start with a little bit of your background. You've had an interesting ride going from a couple of your roles into different industries. So let's hear something about that.
Yeah, everyone always asks me how did I get into sales, and I firmly believe that people go into sales in two different from two different areas. One is your parents are in sales, pharmaceutical sales, insurance sales, and then naturally you grew up and you go, yep, sales is all I know. Second one is that sales just essentially kind of fell on you. You walk into sales, sales choose you. You didn't choose sales, and I'm very much in the second camp of that. I got my first exposure into the sales world as an agency recruiter for sales organizations, and that was purely by chance, right? Started coming in and started pitching sales jobs to a lot of candidates, but after about pitching hundreds of sales jobs, realized that this is something I want to dive into, and just essentially kind of sold myself into it, and got my first role in outside sales for a SaaS company at 5 Stars that specialized in customer engagement for SMBs. And so did that for about a year or 2 years or so. I didn't feel like I was a better salesperson than others. I just felt like I believe in the product more, and I believe in the mission and vision that we're selling into. And so I believe that led to my success, and had an opportunity to lead and rebuild actually a sales team at that point. Where about a couple of years later exited the company, having an opportunity to jump onto UpKeep. At that point, I was managing 3 regions, 5 managers, and 40 sales reps.
Dang.
So
keep going. Okay, go ahead.
No, yeah. And so and that led to my journey here at UpKeep.
Nice. And you were there pretty early at 5 Stars, and UpKeep's not like the biggest of orgs. Do you like being at companies that are a little maybe on the smaller side?
It's a very different different sets of challenges, I would say. 5 Stars was definitely a lot bigger than UpKeep when I first joined, but partially the reason why I decided to move away from 5 Stars into UpKeep is that we had a very streamlined process. We had a playbook, we had an enablement, we have a lot of resources supported around it. And part of the reason why I jumped into UpKeep is because of the challenge that there's not a whole lot of resources, but I looked at it as this is a blank scratch pad for myself to stretch my muscles in.
Got it. That makes sense. I mean, there's definitely a DNA of, and I've traditionally been at smaller companies too. There's a DNA of people that will tend to stay at smaller companies versus go to really big ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Garris, I was going to ask you, I've heard this story a few times where there's recruiters that are pitching candidates on sales jobs, and you're talking about how this role you can make so much money, and then you see all these people being super successful, and you're like, hey, there's no way if this person can do that, there's no way I can't do that too. Was that part of I've heard that a number of times from former recruiters who have turned into successful salespeople, like I could be doing way more than this, and you see the upside of potential earnings and career stuff. Was that kind of part of that journey?
Yeah, at that point I was fresh out of college, right? I just graduated with a degree, and I was pitching people $250,000 in OTE job. And at that point, that was about 10 years ago now.
Yeah,
it was a lot of money in front of me, and absolutely, there's this thoughts in your head that instead of recruiting other people, why not explore into it? And happened to find organizations that was able to take me on without any sales experiences.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's still a lot of money, to be clear.
It is still a lot of money, absolutely. But we're looking at a wide range of different sales jobs at that point, and it was very interesting to have those conversations, and it ended up being a part of it.
Mm-hmm. I know we're going to get into sales at UpKeep, and I don't want to jump the gun too much here, Darin, but I definitely want to go in the direction of how the background of recruiting and pitching people on roles has influenced how you present your organization to potential candidates, and how that background in recruiting has framed kind kind of has framed that approach that you take in your candidates. So I don't know, Darin, I'll let you make sure that we're not way too far off track here, and make sure we're on the right track here if we're going to catch on that here in a little bit.
We can move around as needed. Yeah. But I do think recruiting is sales. And Garris, that's an take from you.
Absolutely. Recruiting is absolutely sales, and you're actually doing a two-way selling, if that, right? You're selling the job to the candidate. You're also selling the candidate to the job. I do think there is a fundamental difference between recruiting at an agency versus recruiting as an organization. Recruiting as an agency, you're guaranteeing somebody for about 90 days, and afterward, it's not really your problem. And it's a way to actually think about it, but also you're recruiting in volumes. Whereas recruiting internally, you're working with that person. You have to think about whether or not the culture fits well. You know more about the organizations than you ever do when you're actually an agency recruiter. So there's a really big difference there. And also, I mean, to be quite transparent, right? When you're an agency recruiter, oftentimes you're looking at it and go, I'm not sure if that's it. I'm not sure if this is going to be a job. But you know, if you're going to actually want to take a stab at it, and you see that the candidates are extremely excited, you want to make sure that you're actually doing the balances of both. Whereas recruiting internally as an organization, you see a candidate that's not at all excited, you have to oftentimes make the call to actually move on to somebody else because of for the benefits of both the organization and also the candidate experiences themselves. But on the other side is you're just selling the organization a lot more because you're living it, you're breathing it, and you're speaking from your personal experiences of why the organization is a great one to join.
Yeah. And I mean, and as your role too, like, do you feel like it's gotten a more of a recruiting role than a sales role?
For my role as a head of sales?
Yeah, as it's evolved.
Yeah, absolutely. You're always looking for the best person to join your organization, join your team, even if a role isn't open. You always want to make sure you can connect with people, right? One of my mentors, who is actually part of our investment firm at Emergence Capital, Doug Landis, when I first joined, he talked about how we want to make UpKeep the SaaS organizations to join here in LA, and this is very much still the North Star goal. How do we make UpKeep to be an organization, to be a company where sales professionals want to be a part of because of the repetition here within the area? Yeah,
that's a good segue into like what you're looking for. How do you make sure you're hiring the best talent? Like what goes into that?
Yeah, there's a lot of methodology to go into it, right? But we believe in one of our core values is grit over prestige, and what that means is it's irrelevant. Sorry, maybe not irrelevant. I mean, grit over prestige for us means that regardless of what you have done in other organizations, you might have very embellished resume from other sales orgs. When you come here, we're also looking for people to continue to elevate internally. That certainly is a leading indicator, but what we really care about is what you're able to do here within the organization. New people generally bring in very, very fresh insights into the organizations, right? Myself being here for about, close to about 5 years, I've gotten some very jaded ideas around some of the thoughts that I believe is actually going to work well. But it also takes some gut checking from other people and go, hey, this doesn't make sense, or hey, have you really thought about doing this, right? And we're expecting people to actually dive in head first, not necessarily from just a results perspective, but from a feedback, from observation, and to continue to challenge us as an organization to be better. And those are the people that we're looking for. We're looking for people that are gritty. We're looking for people that are willing to speak up and provide feedback, but also be keen into taking in feedback from other people within an organization that have proven track record.
How do you look for grit in the interview process? What are some of the questions, or how do you suss that out when you're chatting with candidates?
Yeah, it's hard when you're just looking at a resume. For me, resumes tell, stories sell. You are asking a lot of specific examples of, tell me a time when you did this. or tell me a time when you overcome this. Understanding what they have actually done in those situations, what was the results, what was the outcome, as well as learnings, you can't make that up. You cannot just put that on a resume. You cannot just come up with a story in matters of seconds. If you do, kudos to you. I might have to change my interview approach, but I generally speak volume to the qualitative aspect of it that people just generally cannot make up.
Yeah, agreed. What do you have some specific questions you asked there that kind of dig it out?
Yeah, so I mean, those were part of the examples, right? It's just like essentially asking them to tell you a story about something that happened. And one of my favorite questions to ask is, tell me about a time when when you're about to miss quota or you miss quota. What was the situation? What led to it? And what did you do to overcome that? That tells me one or two things. If they're to tell me a story about when they're about to miss quota, they're going to tell me exactly how they navigate through the thought process, put in an action plan in place, and how they executed towards that, and what was the outcome of that, right? I'm not so much looking for somebody that are perfect and never miss quota. I believe that everybody had missed quota once or twice in their entire life. The most important part is about learning from it. So understanding the thought process is what I'm actually looking to hire for. I'm not looking for somebody that has a perfect resume. I would actually much rather hire somebody that had overcame those challenges and then became the top leaders within the organization. That to me speaks a lot more volume in terms of overcoming challenges. If you never overcame a challenge in other organizations, you may here at UpKeep, and the grit and the perseverance is the most important part for me when I'm looking for somebody to be in the front line.
Yeah, I like you made a comment like you've been there 5 years, and this happens. I've had long tenures in my career, and the concept of as a sales leader, you hire people, some of them are individual contributors, maybe managers too. They have ideas, and you're thinking to yourself, I've been here 5 years. I know that won't work here. Or I know that, right? Like but so how do you when you bring on new team members, how do you navigate that kind of communication in a without seeming like the one that's like not open to change, but it's more like, well, we tried that already. We know that won't work here. Like that caught my attention when you mentioned that. So I was just curious to dig into that just a little bit.
Absolutely. Something that didn't work 3 years ago doesn't mean that it's not going to work 3 years later, especially in the organization our stage. It's all about just really sussing it out and also prioritizing prioritizing the changes that you're trying to make within the organization. And I'm also always open to feedback, right? Just to hear it out. What I typically would do, if this is something that we've tried and then failed completely, we would actually then have that conversation, talk about what had happened last time around, and if they felt very, very compulsive on it, or if that is actually something that they have actually done in the past, we would then actually compare the differences of what we had tried the first time around, and absolutely not opposed to trying it the second time around or third time around, right? Again, the organization that's always ever changing, something that didn't work a couple of years before doesn't necessarily mean that it's never going to work again. It's just a page in a playbook that you may just need to pull up when the time is right.
I like it.
Cool. Yeah, let's get into like how you get talent into the funnel, like your hiring funnel. What does that look like for UpKeep?
Yeah, I mean, we have an amazing recruiter that goes search for the market and often bring in really, really, really good candidates. And I see myself and our my sales leadership team, we have a fiduciary responsibility to spread the words and bring in talents out elsewhere, right? The best candidates that we typically come in is going to come in through internal referral from the people that are happy within the organization, to bring in other people that they have actually worked with in the past, or other people that they know personally that are willing to vouch for them. Recently, and maybe this is a trend because of the market out there, people have actually been reaching out and going above and beyond on LinkedIn, more so than just sending a resume. They're not just saying, hey, here's my resume, go and take a look. I'm interested in having an opportunity to work for your organization. I've gotten 36 9-day plan in my mailbox. I've gotten people that are reaching out to me. I've gotten people that cold call me, because they found my information elsewhere. Now, those are, especially if we're hiring for our BDRs and we're expecting people to prospect, the ability for them to actually prospect a job leads me to believe that they can actually prospect for the right type of people within the organization. So that has been very, very impressive trend for myself to see. Again, especially recently.
Wow.
It just seems so basic. Like you think it's above and beyond, like, but to me, that should just be the norm, like we have your job postings on RepVue, and we don't tell people just to apply for a job blindly. Like you got to work it like it's a full sales cycle.
Absolutely. And exactly. And this is especially part of the job description, right? And it goes to show, but I would also caution some people that are just saying, hey, Garris, I noticed you're in sales, would love to connect, and then all of a sudden just throw your resume. That's not tailoring the message at all. Versus somebody else that had actually noticed something that I posted, noticed something about the website, noticed something that I said on the about page, or even just what they believe, why they believe they're a good part of the organization, and relate to me as a part of the message and tailoring that message to that. I oftentimes would pass those into the very, very front of the line for my recruiting or my recruiting team, because I do want to actually prioritize those conversations.
Yeah, if somebody delivers a 30, 60, 90-day plan that's tailored to your company as part of cold outreach, and it has some valid and good points. Obviously, candidates aren't going to be experts in your product or solution, but if they put that together, I would certainly put that in the bucket of above and beyond, and maybe slide into the top of the funnel, slide into the top of the candidate funnel and give them a chance. So particularly for an AE, and I agree, cold calling, if you're going to be a BDR and if cold calling is part of the process, then I mean, I think Darin, we could it's like it should be table stakes, right? But it's not, right? Like people have never done that stuff regularly, and it's always been seen as above and beyond. And it's interesting. Garris, you're saying like you're seeing a lot more of it now. I guess it's not, we know there's been cuts and maybe more people are on the market, but I love it. Love hearing that. It might make for a good LinkedIn post here in the next week.
Absolutely. Yeah. If this becomes a trend, I'm not going to be mad about it.
You're right. Makes your job easier.
Makes your job very easy, for sure.
I feel like the older I get, the less common sense is actually common sense. It comes the above and beyond. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think sales organizations in general are teaching the people on what does it look like to prospect, right? There's a lot of increasingly there's a lot more SDR boot camps, BDR boot camps. They're also teaching people on how do you prospect for a job as if you would actually prospect for a candidate. So that certainly raises a bar out there for the marketed candidates that we have out there.
Mm-hmm. And people like us that are out there posting stuff on LinkedIn on a regular basis that that job seekers may be following. You don't even have to pay for a course. You can just scroll the feed and get some good ideas, hopefully.
Absolutely.
If you were in sales and you wanted free training, all you literally have to do is just follow Ryan, and whatever he posts every day, we could turn it into a book at this point with how much content he's spewed out there.
There's a lot of content.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many contents out there. And there's a lot of, gurus and people that are actually talking about, what the trend looks like and what are some of the things that we should be looking at. And absolutely, you're 100% right, Ryan. Nobody really needs to pay for a course at this point. It's out there on the internet. It's out there on resources, blog posts. People just need to follow and just make sure that they're following the right channels.
All right. I might tag you in one sometime soon, reference some of this.
Absolutely.
But that's what's wild to me too, is like we live in this world now where there's more access to information on anything that you want, and yet there's still people that are living like it's 1994, pre-internet, right? Like maybe I don't know if that's internet, but you know what I mean. And like people are still running this playbook that's just so outdated. Like that to me is just mind blowing.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the playbook that you saw that the people are running right now, Darin, that you think is outdated?
It's blindly just applying to 300. I applied to 300 jobs and I didn't hear back. Okay, what else did you do? Like, did you literally just like fire it off into the ether, or did you reach out to Garris? Did you come up with a plan of what you would do? Did you go through the list of AEs that work there and say, hey, they came from a background similar to mine, and here's how I can be successful there? Like, it's like little things of connecting the dots, and there's just not enough people that do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would add too, I mean, we see this, with RepVue, there's a company, you might have 8 different jobs listed on our website, from SDR to director of sales, and an individual will go apply for all of those. Right. So it's like, well, hold up now. Like if you're applying for the director of sales role, do you want the SDR role? If you're applying for the SDR role, are you qualified for the director of sales role? Like, we literally had to like put in like some governors and it's like, okay. And those are the things where it's just like, come on, people, like, and then the hiring managers and the recruiters see that, well, this person's not serious, right? There was zero research done. So that's a pass.
I would certainly put that out there for sure. That certainly grinds my gear, and that's a very surefire way for you to say you're going to disqualify me. When I'm looking for salespeople, I'm looking for people that we can actually mold within a sales organization. Now, of course, I understand that maybe about 2 years or so, 3 years or so later, you don't think sales is for you, and that's perfectly okay, right? Sales is not for everyone. You have to try it in order for you to know whether or not that's it for you. You cannot give me any indicators that sales is not maybe not for you at the point where you're actually applying for a job. We have set up the entire structure to elevate people within the organization, from SDRs to BDRs to AEs to TMs to management positions. And oftentimes, and a lot of sales leaders I would likely agree, that they would likely are not going to actually spend a whole lot of time for somebody that don't know what they want to do in life. You have to be really, really sure that this is something that you want to actually go through in order for somebody to really invest in. And I think that ship goes both ways.
Agreed. Let's get into like the interview process at UpKeep. How does that, if I'm getting into the process, what would that look like?
Yeah. We believe in speed to hire, right? We want to make sure that we're identifying candidates very, very quickly and moving on to candidates very, very quickly. One, for the candidate experiences, and also for our internal efficiencies overall. So we have a 3-step process, and generally this is applied for SDRs, AEs, or our individual contributors. First one, you're going to have a recruiting screen, basic qualification questions that determine whether or not you're going to be a overall good fit. And then you're going to have a conversation for about 45 minutes with the hiring manager that digs in a little bit deeper into the background, and also asking the behavioral and questions that I have actually just talked about. And then the last one here is, depending on the role, sometimes we do an account presentations, sometimes we do a 30, 60, 90, but sometimes we also do an exercise. And based off of that, we come up with consensus and we go for a hire or no hire. The whole process typically takes anywhere between 7 days to about 14 days or so. We don't want to drag it any longer.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, how did you get to that point? Was it like that when you got there, that quick?
We had traditionally been moving relatively quickly here at UpKeep. The process on what that would look like and what's the last step is going to be had actually evolved over time, right? We have good hires, and we were able to actually identify what attributes that they actually exhibited during the interview process, and then people that didn't work out, we also talked about why we believe that they had actually worked out, what they would have actually worked out. And what we need to actually revamp as part of the process, but the main components are typically there.
Gotcha. What about, and I love asking this question because it gets some really interesting responses, but like, what's somebody that you thought was a great candidate that didn't end up getting the job?
Yeah.
Why and why?
Usually it happens when you're looking at a resume and you're looking at all the right qualifications and all the right tech stack. Seemingly that's going to be a very easy person to onboard, right? But as I mentioned earlier, resumes tell, but stories sell. So when you bring somebody into the funnel, they would be embellishing around how many opportunities they were able to get, what is the percentage of outbounds, and then what is their average contract value that leads you to say, yep, this is the person that we're looking for. But as you start speaking to the specifics, and when you ask very specific examples when they last did something, and they started giving you very general answers, that's when you are able to actually suss it out, right? And so candidates, again, may look great on paper, but what really matters is how do you translate that into specific examples, a specific story. If you're not able to do that, chances are we copied something off the resume from somewhere, or it just sounds great. Again, you can make up stats, but you can't make up stories.
I like that. That's probably the takeaway from this podcast is you can't make up stats. You can make up stats, but you can't make up stories. I like that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I love that. Resumes tell and stories sell. I tell people all the time, one of the many parallels to sales in terms of interviewing and recruiting, which is, your resume is just a vehicle to get you a conversation, right? Like just a vehicle to get you. And then when you have that conversation, that's where you need to, that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of, selling, right? And getting through that, just like whether it's marketing materials or whatever, when you're selling or whatever that is, like, or your cold outreach, all you're doing is just trying to get somebody to agree to converse with you. And if you can agree to and that's a common mistake too, resumes. Sometimes people try and sell on their entire resume, right? Like, I don't need all that. I know what an account executive at this company generally does. You don't have to list out 40 bullet points. I just, love that. I hadn't heard that before. Maybe I have, and maybe I'm just getting old and forgot. Resumes tell and stories sell.
Yeah, and I think the interviews from even 5 to 10 years ago to what's happening now, it's been very, very different. And by myself personally, even after the first screen, you typically don't even have the LinkedIn or the resume in front of you anymore. As a hiring manager, this helps with confirmation bias, right? You're looking at something that's great, and so you really want to like the candidate. And for me personally, not having a resume in front of me enabled me to have a much better and organic conversation. Have them tell me, information that I can't find elsewhere, and that's what spurs up a really good conversation. Typically, the first time, we were starting the conversation there, and I'm asking them to introduce themselves. I generally specifically would tell them, I reviewed your resume. Tell me something that I don't know from reading your resume. Tell me something I don't know from reading your LinkedIn, right? That gets them to dig a little bit more and just put them on their toes.
Yeah, I can say with certainty, the folks we've hired at RepVue over the last 12 months plus, if you just look at the resumes without talking to people, we would have made different decisions. Right?
Absolutely.
And that's just, now those aren't salespeople, but it goes the same for salespeople as well, right? And that it's what's above and beyond. So love it.
Well, it's also the DNA that goes into talking to prospects and customers, because if you can't articulate yourself in a way that's going to resonate with the hiring manager or the recruiter or whoever, like, why would you want that person talking to your prospects and customers? It's the same DNA.
Yeah. You can tell when somebody had rehearsed an interview versus somebody that's having an organic conversation. It sounds very, very different. You can sniff that out really quickly, just like reading off the sales pitch or reading off the sales script. A lot of that is translatable.
Yep. How about ramping the team? Because you've got people that are remote. They're not all in LA, right?
Yeah, we started in prior to COVID. We were all based in LA, and sooner or later you're seeing the team getting a lot more remote. So we have to rely a lot more around software to help ramp up. Softwares like Course, Guru, Salesloft, Shadowing are great. Not only does it create a central database and repository of source of truth of what everybody should be working off of, but that creates a playbook of what what looks good, and we also have a playlist of what don't do, and for them to actually go into review. I think also the part of what we've realized, and continue to evaluate, right? Ramping somebody successfully is also setting up proper ramp expectations of what we believe that person can do within the first 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days. And so continue to calibrate that, and between every single hiring classes are extremely important for sales leadership to make sure that the expectations are set correctly from both the quota perspective, and also this goes back to your operating plan that you have to report it back up to your investors. So it's important for us to make sure that we're communicating and continue to evaluate those ramp expectations from both an input and output perspective, so then that person could be set up on a solid ground. I would say something that worked extremely well is pairing them up with another buddy, not within only within the organization or within your own individual team, but also more importantly, bringing them into the product, bringing into the marketing. Ramping somebody, and oftentimes when you're onboarding somebody remotely, is often very, very lonely. You're not doing this in classes, you're not doing this with people. The only times you see other people's are over Zoom. So having a buddy system has been extremely helpful to get people to be more open and to, again, providing feedback and everything else that we just talked about.
Are they same role, buddy system, same role, or close, or not necessarily?
We have one buddy system that's within the same role, and then we have buddy system that's also cross-departmental, and that specifically is done intentionally with other people with a different role, so then they can actually see what they're doing and what other organizations are working on.
I think it's good in person too, because it's lonely even if you've got a class of 5 people, even if it's 5 people with the same role you're going into, because they don't know the answers that you're potentially going to ask, because they're all new too. Like I think the buddy system on both sides of the fence is huge. I've done it in the past too.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially within the first 5 days, you're just shoved with playbooks, materials, information. You're drinking from fire hose. Having organic conversations is going to help people debrief a little bit, but also make sure just kind of take a step back from just reading all those information from data points and all that, to just really fully understand the people is what made up the organization.
Yeah, the sanity checks along the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you guys mentioned you're doing kickoff and all that remote virtually this year with an annual in-person later on. Like what do you do kind of day to day to keep the team connected, or maybe week to week more than day to day?
Yeah, sales teams are all about driving competitions, friendly competitions, and driving spiffs, right? And so having those on a regular basis is very critical, for us to actually connect as a remote first. And so our XDR leaders do very, very well in that. We have a weekly spiff, we have a monthly contest, and they come up with this series of events that we're actually just driving on a regular basis just to make your job fun. But we also bring the team together on a weekly and a monthly basis, right? And this takes in the help for both the sales leadership and also our people ops team and our community team, where we have an internal community team to do that. So we do all hands on a monthly basis to keep everyone aware of what's going on. But we also do a weekly 30 minutes just to do something fun for the rest of the departments. I know Slack is a really, really good tool for that, but oftentimes we just hopping on a Zoom and having a conversation, again, to Darin, to your point, sanity checks has been helpful, just kind of break up the day a bit, but also get everyone connected within, not just within the sales team, but other people within the organization as well.
Yeah, I'm going to give a shout out to my boy Carl over at Refine Labs. He coined the term cuddle, which is a cold huddle. And I do it all the time. Like you just ping somebody because like you have a question, and I feel like that stuff's helped big time.
Yeah. Carl
with the cuddle.
Yeah.
All right. We asked this to everybody. This is our finishing question. Would you or have you shown a candidate your quota attainment dashboard?
Absolutely. You should ask that. As a salesperson joining a sales organization, what is your typical quota attainment how many people are hitting quota. If you're not asking that, you're doing yourself a big disfavor, right? You have to know the organization that you're about to join. It's just as much as an interview for them as it is for us. But also for us, this is part of a process. As part of the skill set that we evaluate is to show somebody a dashboard of, hey, here's how much pipeline, here's how much pipeline coverage, here's the win rate, and here's the results. So tell me what that person may actually be doing well, or tell me where that person could improve, and what are some of the improvements if you were that person to do that. And in order for you to do that, you would actually have to show them CRM and quota attainment dashboard. But again, I think it's important for both candidates and companies to put transparencies up front. There's a lot of companies that are putting in to OTE that are not attainable by a lot of people within the organization. We need to start, again, the relationship with a really good solid ground, and that has to do with the transparency within the organization and having the insight of what's going to work well, in order for us to actually start the relationship.
We call that off-target earnings. Shirts. We have shirts.
That will work too.
Yep. Well, hopefully not, right? Like, we don't want people going into situations where they're going to be off-target earnings, but it happens way more than it should. It's unfortunate.
Yep.
All right, that's it. Thanks for coming on, Garris. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thoughts from your end? Anything else you want to add?
That's great. We need to get Garris an off-target earnings shirt. But I think we knew the answer was going to be transparency for the win on that last one, given we're partnered up, and we know how y'all approach things over there. So glad to hear it.
Yeah, and also I think it's helpful for us to continue to see those feedback from the people that are working with us internally. Oftentimes, you don't get those feedback as transparently as you could when it's not anonymized. But either way, as part of a leadership team or part of a coach, you want to see your people to be successful and provide feedback that are going to be actionable for you, right? And that oftentimes, again, we talk about confirmation bias here within our roles. It helps you make a bit of a gut check and say, hey, something's off. We should make some sort of adjustment or make some sort of changes, because that's the feedback we're hearing. So it's extremely valuable.
Yeah. Yep. Thanks, Garris. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Likewise. Thank you.